Okay, well, here we are at the offices of Microsoft, and this is to introduce Mark Nallon, who's a student intern with the Travel Procurement Team for Microsoft Corporation. And my name is Jon Reeve. I'm the chair of the Education Working Party for the Institute of Travel and Meetings. And the aim of this podcast was just to give people a flavour of what it's like to be an intern within the travel services environment. And so, Mark, over to you. Just give us an idea of what your experiences have been since you've been working here, and what your impressions are of the travel industry so far.
So, really, my experiences have been very positive overall. It's a lot of responsibility to take on when you first get here. Quite overwhelming in the early stages, but the level of experience you pick up is phenomenal. You really can't stress that enough to someone who's considering applying for an internship. It's what we were told when we were in the initial stages, but you really can't understand until you've had an internship yourself and realised, particularly if you look back at what you knew in the first month and how you even day to day, how you sort of conduct yourself comes across. It entirely changes, and the way you structure your calendar and everything really does improve as you gain the experience in a
So
life.
if you had to go back and just to revisit you before you applied for the internship, and you maybe 5-6 months after that, what advice would you give to people that are applying for internships now?
Preparation is the main thing that I would suggest. So
And what do you mean exactly by that?
So if it's applying for an internship, prepare, consider what questions you think you're going to be asked and have answers to those. Sometimes it's easy to prepare for an interview and think, well, I hope they ask me this, this and this, and you'll have answers prepared and ready for that. But also consider the questions that they might ask you, and you might not have an answer ready in your head, but that's the whole point of the preparation process, is to know even the questions that aren't so easy to answer, and be able to come back. Okay,
so now you found yourself in the world of travel. Okay, what do you think is particularly challenging about this industry, the travel services sector?
So it's very much based around specific management information in our department, and it's analysing trends of flights. So that's a huge part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
The information process can be quite difficult to work through sometimes because of all the different fields and what you would imagine is a straightforward process of a, say, international flight from London to Seattle. When you really break it down and look at the data, which is covered completely by the information we have.
Yes.
Every aspect of the data is covered, and there are a lot of different ways you can look at that.
So you mean by data, you mean things like trip duration, the carbon emissions for that flight, the type of fare that's been paid, all those kind of elements that come together to form a cogent piece of MI that would assist Microsoft when they come to putting forward a request for proposal for new supplier arrangements, or that kind of dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. So that information is there in raw data form, and it can be produced for our team to analyse how we've been doing in changes to policy.
Mm-hmm.
It can be produced for some of my commitments that relate to the environment and sustainability team, so that they can say how they're doing with meeting their carbon commitments.
Yes.
So there's lots of different areas that information could be used for, and it's getting used to the process of breaking that down and looking at what's relevant.
Part of the evaluation that you're conducting for based on that management information leads Microsoft to form an opinion on how they can manage a responsible travel program, and to ensure that travel is undertaken when it's necessary in an efficient and economical way, but also to manage the environmental impact in terms of when travel is avoidable, you have other routes, maybe using conferencing technology, etc., to facilitate meetings that would perhaps in the past have necessitated a trip. So it's all about travel management and meetings management in the wider sense, and the information that you're collating is very vital to that analysis process.
Absolutely. So the processes are already there to measure the trends and the flight. What we do is look at that information and work on ways that we can change the processes or improve the processes that are already in place to ensure that everything's booked in policy, that the overall expense is reduced, and that travel is reduced as well where necessary. And what we need to consider is that the environmental aspects of travel and the cost saving aligns on in that respect, but when it comes to focusing time and effort into reducing travel based purely from an environmental perspective, it doesn't necessarily have a priority, especially in procurement, which is focused so much on just expenses and improving expenses.
Okay, so in terms of your contribution to the team, what do you think is possibly the most significant element that you have been critical to in terms of a project? What's your...
I think while I was only partially involved, I was just in a supporting role for a project called the Virtual Travel Fair that we started in my first month, I think. Now, it's as the project manager has had increased commitments to other areas, having worked with this project from the start, I've managed to take a much more key role in that, to the point where I'm running this project day to day and having regular one-to-ones with the project manager.
So you as an intern, I think the point I was trying to tease out is that you as an intern feel very much engaged as part of the team. You're not on the periphery, you're in there, you're getting your hands involved in everything that goes on a day-to-day basis, and it's been a very positive experience from that perspective.
That's right, and that's an example of a project that I started on and really improved throughout. Another example is a project now called the Green Hotel Request for Price that we're doing. Is a project that I've really been given free rein on from the start, which is it's only come really over the past 2 months, but this is relating back to my environmental commitments and how we can influence the suppliers, the hotel partners, to consider the environment a little bit more.
Yes.
When applying for the request for price that Microsoft issues. So we're looking to implement some questions related to the environment in there, and we take the time to research what areas will be most important and what areas will get the most response from the request for price. Yeah. So that's really something that I've been allowed to take ownership of, and it's a lot of responsibility. So
it sounds it, and so allied to that engagement with that type of project, what sort of processes does your line management have to ensure that your progress is monitored and that you've got an adequate point of call for help, if you like? You get engaged in something, you are relatively unfamiliar with travel and the way that the industry works, and you need to be able to tap into the experience of other members of your team. And is that readily available to you in a formalised way, or is it in an informal way?
So I'd say that there's both options available. The team is quite busy during the day, but there's no problem in saying just a quick question to say, look, I don't understand this. Could you just sort of explain it in a little bit more detail to me? But at the same time, you've got the more formal processes, which are the regular one-to-ones with my manager, the regular one-to-ones.
And how often do you do that? How often do you have a one-to-one with your manager?
That's should be once every 2 weeks.
Right.
And that's just with my manager. So we've also got other members of the team. The project manager I have weekly one-to-ones with. So these are all people that have been in the industry for many years. So it's something that you can learn from. You learn a lot from every one-to-one that you have. So.
Well, and I suppose we have to ask, a critical question. You've been here for a few months, you've got a few more months left to go, then you go back to university to do your final year. And after that final year, is working in travel, be it on the procurement side or in some other sector within the travel industry, is that something that you would feel an affinity for? Is something you perhaps want to do?
Absolutely. I mean, I came into this role not knowing the exact specifics of what my day-to-day role would be, but having really got stuck in and found out a lot about how it relates to my interest in the operational structure of how a business runs and the improved processes that come from the regular analysis of the data and thinking about what you can do to make this better, really taps into something that I'm quite interested in. So I feel that also the clear parameters for success and failure is something that interests me as well. So you will get the praise if you've succeeded with a project, but at the same time, if you fail with a project, it's not about criticism. It's about how you can look to make sure that doesn't happen again, and it's about the continual development.
So you feel it's a very supportive environment?
Absolutely.
On balance, yeah.
Definitely.
And you would say to people who were following you perhaps, there's nothing to be afraid of. To just seize the opportunity for an internship and don't be afraid to ask, and sort of say, don't sit there in a stew and not ask a question or say, excuse me, do you know what I should be doing with this? Is that kind of approach?
That's it. You'll come into your role not knowing a lot. I mean, you could research, but really there's nothing that's going to prepare you for coming into a role in full time from being a student. So you just need to be aware of that, but also be aware that the people that you're working with are also aware of that. So they'll support you as much as you need to be supported, and it really is quite a friendly, relaxed way to go.
So just another little question really about the travel industry, I suppose, is do you think it's a complicated industry from all your experience? Do you think it's got particular issues that render it difficult, or is it sort of fairly routine?
I'd say that it's more complicated than you would imagine. At first glance you would assume that, well, why can't you... I mean, we were talking earlier about the process for booking trains via a booking tool. If there's not a process in place for that within an organisation, you would assume, well, why not? It must be quite straightforward. But actually, for everything that isn't in place, there is a significant reason, and it's about trying to work around these and find a way to solve these issues. So there's a lot of problem solving involved with it as well.
There's so many different elements to it as well. You've got air, you've got hotels, you've got surface travel, you've got car rental, you've got the management of risk and security of travellers and all those kind of things. And it is, when you put it all together, a massive piece to manage.
Definitely, yeah.
And perhaps it embraces areas that people who have not had any exposure to the industry are not that familiar with, and by immersing yourself in it, you've come to have an appreciation of that, would you say?
Definitely, and what comes from the range of, you just mentioned all the different areas that it covers. What comes from that is a really broad range of experience that you can pick up in all these different areas. So yeah, that's definitely an advantage of working in this industry.
And finally, it's something that you would consider doing, you said, and one piece of advice to the people that follow in your footsteps as intern applicants.
So we mentioned it earlier, but it's to go into the detail of researching. So make sure you know why you're applying to the company you're applying to. If they say, why are you applying to us? The last thing you want to say is because you had a vacancy going. You need to say why you want to work there, be passionate about it, and have an opinion on what it is, whether it's a product or a service that they're offering. You could say, well, I'm a big fan of this product, I'm a big fan of this service, but also have an opinion on it. I think it did a great job in meeting the goals of, tie it back and really think about how that relates to you.
That's lovely. Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you.